Now, what is Ivandaria, you ask? There is a short and a long answer to this question. The short answer is that Ivandaria is a fictional universe. At the center of this world stands the conflict between two opposing rulers. Both want the best for their nation, but subsequently they almost destroy it. A large, diverse cast of characters plays their parts in either saving or plunging Ivandaria even deeper into chaos. They unravel long forgotten secrets, make unexpected allies and enemies. All the while, the powerful and mighty, even the gods, watch this play unfold in front of them and plan their next moves. Ivandaria is a world full of magic and dangers, of love transcending lifetimes, and deaths so tragic they changed the course of the world forever. Ivandaria's stories are about finding your place in a world that doesn't seem to have a place for you, and about leaving something behind that matters. That was the short answer. The long answer to what is Ivandaria is a little bit more complicated, and the reason why I'm making this video. So let me introduce myself. I'm Alvin. I'm a digital artist and writer from Germany, in my late 20s as of making this video, and I love drawing, writing, and inventing stories and characters. Ivandaria is one of those stories or worlds that I came up with about 10 years ago in 2012. It was my final year of high school and a pretty exciting time in my life in general. I was planning to go to university where I expected to learn amazing things, meet a lot of like minded new people, and I had a lot of plans and dreams for how the next decade of my life was supposed to be like. The reason why I'm telling you this is not only because it's probably a relatable feeling or memory to some of you, but because it also feeds into why Ivandaria turned out to be the way it is. Born in this era of me being very excited about the things about to come, and then foreshadowing, they didn't. I dreamed about becoming a game designer or something in that general field because I just really love creating stories that I wanted to share with the world and maybe brighten other people's days a little bit with what I had to tell. One day, I was struck with a new idea. I saw before me this wild, beautiful land. Huge, dangerous, filled to the brim with magic, but also tragedy and intrigues. I had a more or less complex idea for a story set in this world. It revolved around this quite big cast of characters, all with their unique struggles and goals, and their individual storylines that were woven into each other. In the end, all these characters would meet in one location and have to work together and forget their differences and whatever to defeat the big evil. Your very classical, typical fantasy story, basically. Initially, the characters didn't even have names when I first came up with them. They were very archetypal representations of specific values. There was, for example, the Rebel Queen, who was somewhat of the main protagonist of this whole story. Then there was the Old King, the exiled prince, and a bunch of others. Over time, though, these characters evolved into something a little bit different. None of them was anymore the typical knight in shining armor. I consciously tried to move away from too many tropes and your very typical mainstream high fantasy story. What remained, though, was these characters' unifying goal of wanting to save and protect their homeland, one way or another. I'm not even sure anymore how I came up with Ivandaria as a name for this land, but it stuck. And after a couple of weeks of brooding on this story and developing the characters further in my mind, I decided to sit down and start writing it all down. Under the working title The King of Ivandaria, I began writing an actual novel. And this is where the aforementioned foreshadowing strikes. I had made some good progress on my novel, but at one point I just couldn't continue. There were many reasons that came together at once. University was fun, but very, very stressful and very different from how I had imagined it originally. Searching for a job in a field that really inspired and interested me didn't work out either. There were a lot of other things that all happened in that general time frame that just left me very burned out and stressed and down. I was just helplessly standing there and watching how all my plans and dreams were crumbling in front of me. Being in this very negative mindset and time in my life, it had an effect on my writing abilities. I was struck with the worst writer's block about halfway into the first draft of my novel. I wrote myself into a corner and just had no idea how to get out of there again, or how to continue, or how to get rid of the writer's block. And it was so heartbreaking and so frustrating. This led to me eventually saying, okay, I'm giving up, I've had enough, and I closed my writing program and never opened it again. A few years passed, and I didn't think about Ivandaria as much anymore, but it still never left my mind and my thoughts completely, even though in the same context I always was reminded of my failures. I barely wrote any original stories anymore, but instead I got involved in a couple of online fandoms for video games I really loved at the time. I started drawing a lot. I gained a lot of experience and moved my art really to the next level from where it was. And I also met a ton of really amazing people, some of whom are very, very close friends until this day. I was even able to start offering commissions, and I launched my own Patreon page to sort of have a little bit of a side income. And then I realized, wait, I had this dream once about sharing stories and characters and stuff with the world and brighten people's days, and I was doing that at that time. I was obviously no graduated game designer like I had planned to be, but I was a freelance artist, which is pretty amazing too. I occasionally started drawing my Ivandaria characters again as well, and I dared to post the artworks online to see how people would react to them. Eventually, it just dawned on me that the King of Ivandaria was not dead and gone. I could still start over and tell this story. Around the time I started posting some original artworks, I also started world building, something I hadn't really considered doing in as much detail before when I first attempted writing the King of Ivandaria. I came up not only with a very detailed history of Ivandaria as a land, but I also realized that the story I wanted to tell about this world had evolved quite a bit. In the same way that I had changed over the years, my characters had also changed a lot. I realized that maybe the King of Ivandaria just hadn't been ready to be told in 2012. I realized that my writer's block maybe was the best thing that could have happened to this story. It was 2019 when I decided, okay, let's start over from scratch and finally tell this story. There's these two separate projects now. The King of Ivandaria, which is the story set in the world Ivandaria and revolves around a very specific conflict, and has a very specific cast of characters too. There is Adovan, Briella, Nerissa, Arlysia, Riknan, Elornin, Rava, Panmorn, Ayala, and a lot of others, who have all been around in some way or another since 2012, but evolved a lot over the years. And then there is the new project, The World of Ivandaria, which is intended to be something like a companion piece or framework or base for the King of Ivandaria and other future stories set in this world. I'm imagining the World of Ivandaria as this big art and lore book, I'm gonna call it. It's going to be filled with art, not only of the characters, but of the world in general, of the cities and landscapes, of the forests, oceans, old ruins and temples, and all the other things you can discover in Ivandaria. It is also going to feature all the world building I've been writing over the years. Articles about Ivandaria's history, its conflicts with other nations or conflicts within its own borders, about the most important cities and how they are structured, about how certain landscapes changed over the years, about geography, climate, magic, animals, anything really that makes a world feel alive and real. And as I said, I want to use it as a framework for my own story or stories in the future, not just the King of Ivandaria, but I hope that it's something that's going to be interesting for you as well. The world of Ivandaria is intended for those of you who, like me, simply love art books and enjoy reading about fictional universes. And it's also for those of you who want to tell their own stories set in Ivandaria, for example, for a tabletop RPG. Very much in the spirit of my teenage years' dreams of creating stories and worlds to share with other people, I want to share Ivandaria with you as a sandbox that we can all use together to be creative and play in. If all, or at least some of this sounds interesting to you, you can actually help me move this project to the next level by supporting it on Patreon. I've been actively dedicating my Patreon to all world-building matters involving Ivandaria, with occasionally a little bit of fan art because I'm still a nerd who loves video games a lot. My patrons can to a degree influence what goes into the book, and you get all the artworks that I create in full resolution. You get them before anyone else, and you get artworks that I post nowhere else until this book is finished. The end goal of my Patreon campaign is not only finishing the World of Ivandaria art and lore book, but eventually also continuing to work on the King of Ivandaria and a lot of other stories, and hopefully eventually reach my dream goal of being able to work full-time on artworks and telling stories and sharing them with you. If this sounds interesting to you, but before you support anything, you want to see some more actual content first that isn't just in this video, you can check out my social media sites. You can follow me on Instagram, Tumblr, and Twitter, where I am at Elvenbeard. On Instagram and Twitter, I majorly have artworks, but on Tumblr, I have not only artworks, but also some writing. And I also recommend you check out Tumblr because out of these three, it's the one that dates back until 2015-ish, so it has the most content that I've shared online so far. If you're the most interested in my world building and want to read about Ivandaria before looking at any artworks, I can recommend you my World Anvil page. Not all of the articles there are up to date anymore, but it's where you have the bulk of information regarding Ivandaria. And that is the long answer to what is Ivandaria. It's a world and a story that changed and evolved a lot over the years that I'm aching to bring to life now, with your help. I'm aware this video barely scratches the surface, but I still hope you've been given a somewhat decent first impression of what this world is about and my motivations behind it. Definitely let me know in the comments or on social media if a couple of world-building videos about Ivandaria is something that you'd be interested in general, and if so, what aspects of this world you'd be most interested in learning about. I'd also be happy to answer any questions you have regarding anything I've said or maybe not said in this video. And with that, all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for watching, and never give up on your dreams and ideas. Sometimes they just need a little rest and time to grow and evolve before they can become what they've always been meant to be.